I'm Gabe Lullo, and welcome to the Do Hard Things podcast. We're talking to go-to-market leaders and entrepreneurs who have conquered the challenges, the hustle, and the grind. Get ready for real talk, real insights, and no fluff.
But the hardest thing in the world right now is not actually closing deals, it's actually getting somebody's attention.
If you don't have that hook in that first 5 to 10 seconds, guess what? They're going to scroll to the next one.
You need to go in and you need to make it sound like yourself. That's the biggest piece of the puzzle. And I promise you, we can all tell.
The people that are trolls and the people that are haters never done the thing that you're doing.
I love doing this podcast because I get a front row seat to some of the greatest minds in sales.
Gone are the days of saying stay in your lane. When you're an executive leader and you're an enterprise-wide leader, there are no lanes. You've got to be partners.
Curiosity is like when the type of questions you ask is sometimes the value that you bring.
I need you to tell me when you're ready to buy or what you're ready to do. And I think it's changed so much into like adding more value. And if you're not doing that, then you're definitely going to come off as desperate.
High pressure selling is like a dinosaur tactic at this point.
No parent is like, oh, you should be a salesperson when you grow up, right? Everyone's like a doctor, lawyer, whatever crap. It's never salespeople.
It's not your job to motivate people. It's your job to find motivated people.
It's not cockiness. It's not arrogance. It's confidence knowing I know this and I know that I can help you.
From where I started to where I am today is all because I learned how to sell.
And there's too many people who have only been doing this for 5 freaking minutes. Sit down, close your mouth, actually go out there and get yourself beat up, then come back and tell me if something is dead or not.
That is exactly why I started this podcast, because right there, that's the epitome of doing hard things.
Welcome back to the show. Today's guest, Richard Washington, is a global revenue leader turned founder, and he's on a mission to help early stage startups avoid the cost mistake of hiring the wrong go-to-market talent. After 16 years of climbing the ranks from SDR all the way to director, Richard has scaled teams in the United Kingdom, Spain, New Zealand, and here in the United States. And Richard saw firsthand how to hire the right person can be a multiplier of momentum, and hiring the wrong person can absolutely kill your momentum. Now, through his own firm, he helps founders scale from 1 million to 25 million by embedding his hiring systems that attract entrepreneurs, he calls it. These are the leaders and operators who thrive in chaos and build from zero all the way to the top. Richard, welcome to the show. I am fired up about this one. Our good friend Richard Washington is back. And I say back because I was on his show last year and now he's joined our show. And we're so pumped to have you here, Richard. To kick this off, I just want to say, you are on the front lines of hypergrowth, right? You're building teams internationally. You know how really founders need to avoid those pitfalls, those biggest growth killers, like which are mishires, right? So what is striking you right now when it comes to, that hiring process? What are the mistakes you're seeing? And walk me through, like, where do you come in with these founders right out of the gates?
It's the classics. I don't think it changes. And I think the reason for that is because people just don't get trained on this stuff, right? Like the data is that 82% of managers get no formal training. So what percentage of them ever get trained on how to hire? So what people do is they, over a career, build up all these different things that they learn and they test into what they like to do. But then every person in that process has their own version of what good looks like and their own systems. So no one's really got a unified definition of what they're trying to hire for. And everyone's got their own preferences. So what you create is this candidate experience that's incredibly long, elongated, slow, and messy. And then you get people who are frustrated because they're not getting the outcome. So I think a lot of people just over-index on de-risking the process. And I love to de-risk the process. But de-risking the process doesn't mean hire exactly what you've already got. And it doesn't mean let's just go and be really safe and hire people who have got experience from our industry and they've done the same thing for 5 years and they've already got 5 years experience in this exact role. Like if you're hiring people who have got 5 years experience in the exact role you're hiring for in your industry, are they going to be multipliers? Or are they probably the ones that got stuck in that company and couldn't progress anymore? So you're probably hiring not the best people if that's your strategy. So I think that there's a massive over-indexing there on CV, resume experience, and not enough on what are the true factors that drive growth and impact in our business.
See, that's why I like starting with that killer question because it shows our listeners you know what the hell you're talking about, right? So there you go.
Well, chat GPT, Gabe.
So now let's peel the onion back a little bit. Walk me through some of your origin story because our show is Do Hard Things,
Yeah.
and we don't like interviewing people who went to Harvard to become a sales professional, right? So how the heck did you get started into this, and what led you to be passionate about what you just talked about?
Yeah, I'll give you the very potted history because I'm sure I could take an hour given that level of question. so so went to uni, started working in a nightclub because I thought I could walk out in a 35 grand a year job, but realized I didn't have any experience, knowledge, no experience. What a problem. Went to find a company that would give me the skills that I was missing and was really lucky to find an outsourced SDR agency. Can you believe
that?
Back in 2007. So I joined a business as a lead generation agent
Okay.
and absolutely loved it. Our first project was Xerox, and there was this printer that we could try and market and sell. And I was like, oh my God, Xerox, I've got this thing called an iGen, and that's a £500,000 printer. I'm going to find companies that do printing and try and get these leads. And walked up to my campaign manager with this list of leads and these one-page write-ups for iGen printers, and realized that I'd qualified 4.2 million worth of pipeline in my first sort of 6 weeks. And I was like, this is amazing. This is the most fun I've ever had. And then they moved me on to a harder campaign. And I really enjoyed that too. And we formed a bit of a click. And then I sat next to this really cool guy called Tim Carter. And we shook hands and said, we're going to become managers in this business. And then he became a campaign manager, so looking after clients. And I became a team manager after 9 months in the business. Did that for a year, became a okay manager by the end of after spending a year really failing and learning a load of lessons the hard way. And then became an operations manager, managing managers. That was a massive transition for me because no one teaches you to manage managers. And a lot of the managers I was managing were my managers when I started. So I was managing my mentors, which was a really hard thing to go and learn. Did that for about 4 years and then became a business unit director, running the whole P&L responsibility for the UK HQ, which was a £6 million business unit with 100 staff across sales, operations, account management. That was a massive, massive learning curve. Did an 18-month training program to get that role. So that was a lot of learning, and got to travel the world. So you can see the Fins helmet. So I spent a year in Miami, spent some time in Auckland when we opened up an APAC office, and in Barcelona when we opened up a second EMEA hub. So that was an amazing 12-year career, which taught me kind of all the fundamentals around sales development, leadership, technology that have now created the opportunity for me to go and have a career in talent, which is always the part that I love the most, finding amazing people and finding the ones that are going to grow inside a business.
So this is me always going off script on this one. You talked about managing your managers. So how were you able to get that done, right? The way I look at it is I was in a position like that once, and I knew I needed to gain their respect. So I just outproduced everyone, right? That was my goal, to get the respect. I felt like the cred, right? The street cred I needed to jump into that type of role. And it worked for me, but I've seen it not work. And I've seen people literally leave companies because, someone else became their boss that they trained at one point. And so how did you deal with that? And what was your, tactic to be colleagues with these individuals and then of course lead them?
Yeah. So it's definitely hard. I think one of the things I found hardest is that I knew that I didn't know as much of these people. I'd only been in the business for by the time I became operations manager, just over 2 years, 2.5 years. And some people have been in the business for 10 and were probably 10 years my senior. I was only 25 at this time. And some of them were mid-30s, some of them were in the 40s, some were in the 50s. So it's not only just an experience point of view, but an age point of view. So I just think I went in with a high level of respect. I don't know more than you do. I don't have all of the answers. So it's that car, there's that book by David Marquette, Turn That Ship Around. And it's about right, I know that I don't have all the answers. So let me give people the power and let me give them the opportunity to take responsibility. And I'm just going to go, well, what do they really need? And the reason I got that role was because the person who was the operations manager at the time moved over to the Barcelona office, so it created a gap. And they asked like who wanted to go for it. Not everyone wanted to go for it. So immediately you've got people who are going, I actually would like a leader. Some did go for it and didn't get it. And that was the harder bit, to say, well, I actually got this thing that you would have quite liked the opportunity to go and get. And I don't think I got it right with every single one of those 7 managers that I had, but with the vast majority, you couldn't possibly question that I was fully committed. I didn't really do anything outside of work during my 12 years in that business. It was just total obsession, and then just making it fun for people. It was never about like, we're trying to do this thing, I need you to do this work. It was always constant improvement, gamification, building culture, the stuff that people really loved, and then just giving them a load of authority and autonomy to go and do it their way. And I think that if, as long as you give people the power to be creative, and you give them opportunity to take responsibility, and you give them the power to take ownership, that's when you see the best in people. The thing that was hard was sometimes you're then taking away the growth potential for some people. So that route that they've been going on, that path that they're trying to go on their career, is now stopped. Luckily, we were part of a growing business, so there was opportunities for those people to develop into different services like quota carrying, inside sales, as we sort of innovated in that space. But some people did leave after a few years to go and chase their next career step. But again, I don't see that as a negative. I think if you've done a period in a company and you've been successful, going to have your career, that's a really great thing.
Yeah, and the SDR role can really be a springboard to many different careers, but people are also keeping SDR as their career and now staying in the role until they retire. And I know you said you started as an SDR and now you're scaling revenue teams globally. So what was really that turning point for you that made you realize you don't just want to be in sales, you want to be more of a manager role?
Yeah, I actually really wanted to be in sales. So I told you about this like list of like, iGen leads. I was like, that sounds amazing. I can get in a really nice sports car and drive around and earn massive commission. But it was my manager who brought me into the business, a guy called Mark Phelps, a phenomenal leader, saw within me leadership potential. And it was like little things. Like he was seeing like when we went for breaks or lunch, it would like be me and a little group of friends that I'd assembled, and we would go to like a specific place that I wanted to go to. Maybe I was a narcissist, but it was like, able to lead. And then I loved the training of people. So he gave me an opportunity to start coaching new starters when they came in, like listen to their calls, do role plays with them, create competitions, create training plans. And that creativity around the development of people, I got way more of a kick out of seeing someone do something that they thought was impossible, or overcome a massive limiting belief, maybe make that first cold call, get that first lead, than I did when I got my own. And I really liked it when I got my own. So for me to enjoy it even more when they did it, I think I got the bug. And like no one progresses into management because they want to make more money. A lot of people want to move into management because they want to make more money and because they want more opportunity to take responsibility. But you learn less than if you were like an individual contributor in most businesses. So I think that once you've got that bug for people, it's really, really hard to then not continue down that path. And for me, I always just loved the people side more than the POs.
Yeah.
Yep. Now, doing hard things, going back to our theme here, hiring people is hard. And the reason why it's hard is because sometimes, we all have people, as you just mentioned. Sometimes we make the mistake, right, of hiring the wrong person, and it backfires in big, big ways, right? And you've been doing this, scaling teams for 16 years. So you've likely seen, every type of hire. I know that, from multipliers to subtractors. But what's, one or two painful hiring mistakes that really has taught you the most out of that process?
Yeah. So many myself. How long have you got? Many, right? And then lots and lots with clients. Like often I get bought into a business after they've really messed up a few times, and it's a founder at their wits' end. They can't take another loss.
Right.
They can't get this hire wrong. They can't blow this investment. They can't not get to their next round. It's like everything's on the line if they don't get this stuff right. And I think it always comes back to, are you hiring for someone's capability, or are you hiring for their alignment? And are you hiring for their experience, or are you hiring for the impact? So I think a lot of people just look back, like if you're looking at resumes and doing a traditional recruitment process, the typical questions people ask are, tell me about that. Talk me through your biggest deal. Tell me about this. It's always like past, 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 stats, numbers, facts, figures, put all the data on your CV. But all you're doing is saying, well, what someone achieved historically. And very few people score how people do during the process, so the present. And very, very few look at the future. And I think that if you're just looking at a historical lens with someone, how likely that lens of previous experience and impact is going to be translated into your context. There's a load of variables that will affect that. And one of the massive mistakes that I see people make consistently is they go, well, this person achieved, 1.5 million of quota, and they did that for 3 years in a row. So surely if we've only got a 750 quota in our business, then they'll be able to do it. But that person was in a 50 million pound business and you're a 2 million business. So the amount of resources and structure and support that person had, the market fit, the go-to-market fit, where the product was, everything is completely different than in your context where you're a scrappy startup and you've not got a playbook and you need someone to go and create something from nothing. So I think that only measuring historical, not factoring in the context and the stage of growth that you're in and the environment and the resources that they'll have, and then really not spending any time saying, how are they actually doing in this process? What characteristics are they displaying? How are they making people feel? What feedback are they getting? Are they surprising us? And then not really creating any kind of scenarios other than a skills test. So there's nothing about, here's the impact we're trying to make as a business. Talk me through how you will do that in our context. It's, let's just go and see how good you are in a role play. Go and produce me a 180-day plan. All this sort of like bland stuff that people have done 100 times and can just really quickly research and blag.
Yeah. You can interview well, but you can't do the job well, right? That's the process, right?
Yeah, and many people can interview very well. Many. And that's a bit of a red flag, right? Like, good people probably haven't done that many interviews.
Exactly.
Really, haven't they? They might have done like 5 in 10 years. They might not have needed to interview in the last few roles that they got into because it was an old manager taking them with them. But if someone's like done 100 interviews, maybe that says a lot.
There you go.
Maybe. What about you? So if you're thinking about in Alley-Oop or in your previous, guises, what are some of the biggest gaps that you've consistently felt pain around when you've actually brought the person into your team?
Well, we look for grit more than anything else. Like I want grit, resiliency, work ethic, and desire more than skill set and their ability to interview or their ability to handle every single objection correctly. Like we can teach that, but if you're extraordinarily talented with zero drive, that doesn't give us anything, right? So in sales, it's about pushing through those walls, doing those hard things, and having that grit. So that's what we look for, and it's very hard to find in a resume, if at all. There's hints of it, but you need to unpack all of that in the interview process to really see what that drive is, because we can put someone super talented, amazing CV on the sales floor, and they could be detrimental to not only their goals of hitting quota, but also the culture around them. I remember hiring a phenomenal, talented rep, and he was a top producer, but he was a jerk. He was hard to work with, and he showed up late. He thought he owned the place practically, and everyone saw that, especially when you're in office back in the day.
Sure.
And that was just like a cancer, really, that spreads throughout the culture of the company. So those are some tragic ones that I've made for sure.
Was the gap on that person that they just weren't aligned culturally, or was it a capability thing?
Yeah, I think it was just an ability to align culturally, and his unwillingness to do so because of a straight up ego slash arrogance about it.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm the top guy on the leaderboards. I'm untouchable.
Yeah.
I walked him out in front of everyone on the sales floor, and it really, helps everyone understand, okay, now I have, opportunity to grow. And that's just not what we look for. We want someone to, we always say it takes a village to build a salesperson, right?
Yeah.
And if you're not a part of that village and helping people become successful, then it's not a good fit.
I bet people thanked you for it
Yeah, yeah.
when you remove them,
Very,
because people don't talk about this stuff. Often it's people who are highly capable. So this is why skill will doesn't work. It was like skill will matrix. I'm like, well, that was built in 1969. So like, what is that measuring? That's like, are you a worker bee? Are you someone who can like, you can do bookkeeping and you'll work hard? It's not measuring like someone that would be an impact multiplier who's actually going to go and like scale a bunch of momentum and go and get a load of people bought into a mission and drive a load of results. It's just not. It's like, are you good? Do you work hard? And it's like skill. Like, how many skills does someone need? It's not just one skill, right? So often people go highly like motivated, like the energy, and they've got this skill. Let's bring them in, but they're not aligned. So you create a culture of what I call dividers. So this person was interested in themselves and interested in building power. And they'll often do that looking down. So they'll go, who's at my level or below me that I can get to agree with me? So I collect power. They'll never do it up because they'll know they get in trouble. They know what they're doing is wrong. Or maybe they're not just not even thinking about it. It's just like autonomous behavior that I want to collect power and feel like I'm doing a good job here. But they'll create these islands and politics and factions, which slows everyone down. And people hate working with these people, but they won't tell you often because that person might be top of the leaderboard. And they think that that's the behavior that you're rewarding. And they're like, well, maybe I need to be a bit more like that. So if you don't remove these dividers or fix them, actually you probably create a bunch more because people just think that's what you value as the business. Look at what the top performers get away with.
Yeah. And I think company culture is so important, and it really sets the tone when someone new is brought onto the team. And you've built hiring frameworks, prioritizing clarity, culture fit. What's one thing that you think companies often miss when they over-index on big name experience?
Yeah. So I think a huge part is about, so we talk about culture, right?
Yeah.
So you want people to positively impact the culture. And people go, oh, it's not culture fit, like it's culture add. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? And people go, well, they add to the culture. I'm like, cool, what's your culture? And then they'll throw some buzzwords at me. So I think that there's just like a lack of understanding around what culture truly is. Right. And I think that there's probably 4 levels of culture, which is you have the worst cases, you have a conflicted culture. So people are actually like fighting against each other, full of dividers, not managed, terrible place to be, toxic workplace. But then you have like a sort of compliant culture where people will do what they're told just to avoid being in trouble. They will do it, but it's really just to protect themselves. Then you have a cooperative culture, which is we will work together when told. And if it serves us, we'll do it. But it's never like, it's never autonomous. It's not just like happening naturally. The leaders get frustrated when teams aren't working together and thinking about the big picture. And then you have collaborative culture. This is where people together work as a team to achieve a big outcome. And they see like, we are this big team. Let's collaborate together to achieve this thing for the business. And if you can create a collaborative culture and you find people who want to work in that environment, will bring a collaborative set of behaviors, enjoy working in that environment. If it's a leader, that's the culture they create in their teams. Then that's a massive thing that most businesses don't get right. Because often if you look at a leader and you go, well, you've managed 15 people, you achieve these results, and you don't question it, you might find out that they just led through power. They led through title. They led through fear. And then your very worst case scenario is you've actually got a broken culture where people are conflicted, or maybe they're just cooperative, or maybe even worse, they're compliant. But collaborative culture is the culture that wins because it does take a village to go and achieve a result.
I love it. So in these hiring systems you built, I want to know your perspective on this because a mentor of mine said this to me a long time ago and it really stuck with me. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Managers who are elevated need to come from your top producers, but top producers aren't all designed to be managers. What are your thoughts on that statement, and how do you feel about that when scaling hiring systems internally?
Yeah. Well, it's a good point. I don't know if they have to be your top performers. They probably are. They probably achieved some really good results. But like you say, most people who are absolute rock stars as, let's say, but we're talking about like, let's say an SDR to an SDR manager, right? And it's like, well, they're making a decision. Do I go into like campaign management, or do I go into sales, or do I go into team management? And often they'll go, well, what can I get first? And it's like, well, there's a team management opportunity here. And they'll be like, I really want to be a team manager, but you find out that they're in it for the wrong reasons. So I think that you really just have to start by understanding what the motivations are. Is it money? Is it status? Is it just the feeling that they want to progress? Are they actually thinking about, here's the impact I want to have on a team? Here's the impact I think I can make as a leader. Here are my reasons why I think leadership could be the path for me. You know, will they create, how do they think about people? Are people problems? Or are they, you know, complex things that we need to deeply understand? Will they just get frustrated because people don't work as hard as they do, or don't copy them and don't follow their style? Will they have the sort of patience and self-analysis and self-awareness to go and find the way that people like to work and find their true strengths and how they like to communicate and what they don't like? So I think that there's a kind of person who's a great leader, which is someone who's all about people. And they really understand that people are complicated, and that if you don't understand them, then they will be difficult. And there's the people who are like, I'm obsessed with the idea that we can go and get these group of people to work together to go and achieve something fantastic. And if I can be a facilitator of that, then that would be an amazing thing for the business. So I think it really starts with, what are the true motivations of that person? Often you can just have a very open conversation with that person and just say, look, if what you really want is more money, then here are some different options that we could go and do that for you. And if you do find out that they really do want the opportunity, you can test it. So you can give them exercises and assessments that give them some exposure to those things so they can decide themselves if they want it. We used to run assessment programs for managers. It was like a 3-month process to get the job. And a lot of people would rule themselves out because they realized that what they thought it wasn't what it is. And they thought it was a lot of work for not that much immediate reward. So I think that motivations start first, and then creating some sort of like test environment. Don't risk the team getting damaged. You've got a much higher chance of that leader being successful. And they still need then loads and loads and loads of support, because it's incredibly hard to lead people.
Yeah. And I have a question off of that. When people come, I know a lot of salespeople are definitely motivated by money. And when they say that is their main motivator, do you see that as a red flag? Is that something you try to find more motivators for that person, or do you just let them be motivated by money?
I don't think anyone's motivated by money. Everyone says they are, and everyone wants it, but it's just fuel,
Yeah.
isn't it? Money's just fuel. So you need to understand what they would do with the money. It's like, you know, are they trying to buy a house for their mum? You know, do they just want like a nicer car? Is it that they're trying to get on the mortgage ladder? You know, they're sick of leasing and renting. So I think you need to understand what the money means to them. I think people being motivated by the desire to have more and give more and be more are really, really powerful motivations. But the kind of getting more is the least important and the least fulfilling and the least sustainable of all of them. It's like, what does this help you to achieve? So I personally think in the world of sales, you need people that are super, super, super motivated by money, but it's the result of the work that you do. And it's just fuel to go and do a bunch of things. And if you see customers as checks, you're going to do a really bad job by customers. If you see people as like things that you need to go and get to do what you need them to do so you can make more money, you'll be a terrible leader. And if you just want to accumulate loads of money and then you're just going to blow it all on drink and waste it all on fast cars, you might have to go through that process of learning, but it's not going to make you happy. So I think helping people to realize, if you did even get all this money, what would you do with it? Often people just haven't even thought about it. They've just seen the Instagram and TikTok videos of people driving around in Lamborghinis and thought, I want a piece of that action because then my life will suddenly be perfect.
No, it's so true, because that's how we coach our leaders, is you need to know their why. That's what we call it, right?
Yeah.
Great. You want money, but what are you going to do with it? You know, and you need to figure that out specifically. And we need, as managers, need to help your team figure that out. And then the manager needs to know that. So when time is getting tough and quotas on the line, like, we need to remind, hey, listen, we need to do this, this, and this because this is what you want, right? and that focuses on goal setting. So how do you feel about diving into that? Like, what's too personal? What isn't too personal? How much are our managers be asking our sales team about what to do with that money that they should be, giving to their family or doing, big things or changing their economics from renting to owning? And like you mentioned before, what are your thoughts and how do you lead those teams as an SDR manager, SDR director, even a VP of sales?
Yeah. So I think that you just got to respect people's privacy. It's not a thing to just do like a team meeting and get like 10 people in a room and everyone to write down on a board what they're going to spend their money on.
Right.
Like that's probably not the way to do it. Like where you put like pictures up on a wall of like what that means for people. Some people might like that, but some people might not. They might have like a sick relative or something. They just don't want people knowing about it. So I think that you should always have as a leader that one-to-one relationship, which is one of the highest trust relationships that person's ever had. And often in their family and with their friends, they can't speak the total truth. And they've maybe not ever gone to therapy or had a counselor. So they just got all this stuff inside them. So if you can really take that time to build that proper relationship and trust and understand what people's motivations are, what makes them tick, what's their why, what's their family situation, where are they living right now, what's their goals, what's most important for them, who are the role models they got in their life, who are the people they want to avoid becoming like. You have to have that level of relationship with people. And I think that the people that have got a problem with that, often it's because they've tried to do that. The leaders tried to do that in a way that's a bit too public for them. And there's a process you've got to go through to build that level of trust with people. But if you don't build that level of trust with people, you'll never get the truth. And then you'll get that surprise, hey, can I grab 5 minutes, coupled by a resignation letter. So, you want to build that trust where people tell you if they're feeling off that day, whether they're thinking about changing roles, whether they've just got headhunted, whether something's just going on in their life. You have to know the human side of what's going on in that person's world to be able to manage their performance. And I think without that part, you'll never, ever get a high performing team.
Agreed. I think one thing that doesn't really get talked about enough in hiring is the emotional weight of getting it wrong. I know people see it as just the lost salary, but the person who hired that person definitely can feel like that's a personal failure. How do you coach a founder through this or someone going through that?
Yeah, I think just like remove any shame. If you get it wrong, then it's just feedback. You're going to learn something from that process, and often it's just one of the things that matter most are missing when you make a bad hire. So, for example, if you talked about like you index on grit, you've got this list of things, and it's because you're doing like a large amount of hiring and you've got a big company. But some people don't do that as much, so they haven't got that list. But I've worked out that across all the people that we've ever hired and every person we've ever had on the podcast, when we asked them what was most important to them, and all the people that I'd built in terms of my own teams, there was always 4 characteristics that made someone a multiplier. And if any one of those things were missing, often you could get it wrong. So it spells the word core, and it's collaborative, ownership, resourcefulness, and execution. So they have to be, like I said, someone who creates a collaborative environment. People love working with them. Customers love working with them. They're leaders. They get results to others. They take ownership. So hard to find people that take ownership, but you don't have to chase them. They get it done, regardless of how hard it's going to be. You don't have to go and constantly micromanage to go and get a result. It's just their standard. This will be done. And then they're resourceful. Often we're working in companies that don't have the large amount of resources. We're not talking about IBM here, hiring people. This is about, I need to create a result from quite limited foundations. Maybe I've got to go and sell where there's no playbook. Maybe I've got to go and sell where there's no marketing, supporting documents and collateral that I can send out to people. Maybe I don't have the big brand name. Maybe I'm working with a customer who needs to go and win a battle inside their business. So you're not only someone who is resourceful, but you can help other people to find resources. And then execution, we get stuff done. We do hard things. We achieve the result. We find a way, we make one. And if you miss any of those, they're not collaborative. You probably might hire a divider. If they don't take ownership, they're probably just an adder. You're having to constantly chase them. If they're not resourceful, they probably will constantly be missing target because they find problems rather than ways to be successful. And if they're not an executor, I mean, what have you hired? someone that can talk a good game and understands the theory but doesn't actually get the result. So for me, it always comes down to that 4 core characteristics. And if you are missing any of those, it's your fault because you should have done a better job in the process. So let's look at the system and fix the system so that we can go and make sure that we ask better questions and create the right assessments next time to go and not miss that characteristic.
Wow. Core. I love it. You're the man, Richard. So, okay, let's switch gears here and talk about the future of, GTM talent, right? Because a lot of our listeners are pretty much all of our listeners are within that realm.
Yeah.
Here in the UK, I'm in New York, right? Lexi's in Florida. We live in a remote world these days, right? And so how are people need to be rethinking or looking at the role, essentially GTM and hiring, companies remote, async, global teams? What's your approach on this, and how do you work with companies to help really, not miss, right? Because I think ever since COVID, there's been a lot of companies trying to go hybrid or fully remote, and they're missing it. And I think their knee-jerk reaction is, okay, everyone's back in the office because we don't know how to figure that out,
100%.
right? So walk us through, like, what can they be doing? Because I love being remote because I can collaborate. I have no geographical constraints in hiring. We can all, find talent without having to be, just, handcuffed to our backyard, right? So what are your thoughts on all of this?
I think they should watch a podcast I did with this really cool guy called Gabe. And it was called How to Build a Kick-Ass Remote Team.
Classic.
So I think that you guys do it really well, right? It's like one of the examples. I know that when I speak to you and other people that recommend you and wear your t-shirts and videos, everyone respects what you've built as a business. So I think you're a great example. I think the piece that often people miss is ownership, because why you need an office really is they talk about is because we want to collaborate. But in reality, a lot of people travel to an office and then just sit on Zoom calls all day. So it's not really about collaboration, it's about control. And if it's about control, well, why do we need to control people? It's because we don't think they're going to get the work done. They'll be more productive here when we can watch them. So what's that? That's ownership. So if they aren't a person who naturally takes ownership for things, they've got a track record of taking ownership for themselves, and they take on more responsibility that wasn't even theirs to take, particularly if they're working with dividers and subtractors who they need to go and clear up the mess of. That's a really good person. And you need to work out not only what they've done historically, but like, what are they taking ownership for in their life? Do they have like a locus of control that's everything's a problem? Look how tough the market is. Look at the tariffs. How can I possibly be successful with taxes? Or are they someone that goes, based on my situation and my circumstances, I'm still going to go and achieve the result because I believe in myself and I believe in my capability? And then there's the execution piece is the other part I think that's really important, which is you could take ownership and talk a really, really good game, but you don't get the result. So you want a track record that they've got the result. They've achieved something that was difficult. They did hard things. They solved really complex problems and found a way. And then ideally taught it to other people and shared it in a collaborative way. And I think that those two pieces probably of the core framework are the ones that people miss the most, because they go, right, I need to de-risk this remote hiring. Let me find someone from my industry who's got the experience of a competitor. I'll pay them a bit more and let's go and see if they're going to be successful. But the reality is their motivations to join you is probably just you pay them a bit more money.
Right.
So as soon as someone offers to do that again, then they'll leave you.
Exactly.
So are they aligned? Do they have the core 4 characteristics? And then I think you've got a really good chance that they're going to be successful. The other piece is just from a technology point of view. One of the things that I loved about the podcast that we did is you talked about how you create through technology this place where they feel like they're in a virtual sales floor. You're doing trainings, you're listening back to calls, you're creating that in-office feel, but giving people the freedom to move. Like I think you've got example. I think maybe you did this, Lexi, but you can like move from one place to another place and keep your job.
Yeah.
Like that was a reason people left companies for decades, right? So if people can move, states, or they could move countries and stay in your company, why would you lose people if the culture's good and they're growing, So I think actually it's a de-risking process to offer people the flexibility, as long as you hire for trust and then create an environment where people feel like they can do their best work.
Yeah, it's funny. Like right when we were thinking about going remote, there was someone that came into my office and she was like, Gabe, my husband just got a job as a recruiter for soccer professionals and we need to relocate to London.
Yeah.
And she's in New York. And I'm like, okay, that's awesome. So I have to resign. And I'm like, wait, what? But you don't need to resign. You have a computer? Yeah. You
Yeah.
have internet in London? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll see you on Monday. It's like, it's like, it's just crazy. And that's when we started going all in on it. And she worked for me for years after that, fully remote
Yeah.
in London. And now we have obviously teams everywhere, but that was like the start of it. And it was just so cool. So I know Lexi's got a bunch of questions on this, but I want to kind of set the stage and you touched on it, but I want to, give the words that you use because I love what you talk about here is, intrapreneurs, right? People, like you said, build like owners, not just employees.
Yeah.
So talk me through this entrepreneur, concept. It's a word I only heard from you before and I love it. So talk me through that. And then, Lexi has some follow-ups.
Yeah, it's like this is our DNA, really. So if you look at my LinkedIn tagline, it's finding entrepreneurial executives, managers, and sellers for early stage tech startups. And that took us a long time to get that positioning down. And our podcast is all about celebrating the entrepreneur, the ones who doesn't get the sort of public praise. Everyone just wants to talk to celebrity founders all day on podcasts, right? But we want to talk to the builders of companies. So what I love about the language, and it wasn't my creation, unfortunately, it was created in a university in the US. And my old CEO said, not everyone wants to be an entrepreneur, or certainly not everyone's capable of being and taking that level of risk to go all in on themselves and an idea. The safety and security and certainty of a salary is really hard for people to give up, particularly as they start to accumulate responsibility in their lives. But is the option then to just take a really safe job, and go and work for a massive mega vendor? Well, that felt like the safe thing to do for many years, but now a lot of those companies just riff 10% of their staff every year, right? So is that any safer? So I think a lot of people really what they want always comes down to one word. Like you hire anyone, they say, I want to make this in a company. I want to make what's the word? I want to make an
Impact.
What's the word? Impact. Right, exactly. I was like, I should have teed you up better for that one. I was like, what is it? I threw there was a really poor alley-oop. I just threw a basketball in your face.
You got it right.
So everyone wants to make an impact, and businesses want to make an impact.
Right.
So if everyone wants to make an impact and businesses want people to make an impact, well, what does that mean? And what I've realized is that all entrepreneurs have many, many gaps. And whilst they have incredible courage and they've got a lot of wonderful ideas and they can take nothing and turn it into something, they can create this venture and get other people to believe in it. Often they're really terrible managers. Often they're not systems thinkers. Often they're not builders. They're certainly not culture creators. They can't sell beyond their network. So what's all that building that needs to happen to be able to go and get results in a scalable way through people? You need someone that builds inside a business. So we're looking for builders, not just managers. And I think a lot of the time what people ask for is they go, I've got my business, it's starting to scale, I just need a head of sales. What they really want to do is just pass the problem and the responsibility onto someone else.
Right.
But it's just not the way it works. What you need someone is to come into the business is someone who goes, I love building from scratch. Give me an idea, give me a small set of resources, and I can recruit you a team. I can build the playbooks. I can create the list. I can go and prospect. I can create some accounts. I can manage those accounts. We can hire some people. We can create scaling systems. And founders need that because they want to consistently work on and build and grow the business. So if you've got someone constantly building the train tracks, then the founder can go as fast as they want. But where founders often break down is that they constantly have to go back and try and lay down the track after them because someone didn't do it. But if you've got someone doing that at the same speed as you, or a team of people doing that around you, the possibilities that open up for you as a business and the speed that you can move at, the momentum that you can get, won't slow down. And that's why I think that you need entrepreneurs who build inside your business.
I love it. And I know this is a huge topic on your podcast. And, you're hosting. I just recently started co-hosting this show with Gabe. So I'd love to know, what advice do you have for someone like me or somebody who wants to break into the podcasting field?
Yeah. Again, how long have you got, right? I would say you've got it figured out. Like, we're on episode 84 on our podcast. And I remember when we first started, we saw a video from Mr. Beast and he said, just do 100 and then come back and ask me the next question. So you just have to do it, because every single episode that you do, you'll just figure out a better way to tee up the guest, a better way to ask the question, a better way to dig a bit deeper, to practice active listening. And then you've got, like, how do you ship it? How do you promote it? What thumbnails do you use? What titles do you use? You know, how do you collaborate with that guest to make sure that you're reaching each other's networks? And I don't think we get a lot of that stuff right, because we're really limited in terms of our resources. It's like, my team is very small. I've got me and my podcast host, a producer, and then my wife works a day in the week in my business, on top of me running a full-time business where I do all the things that clients need me to do. So I wish I could spend more time and more money on it. If you have the ability to pump some resource into this, and you can create a person who is responsible for, like, how do we get the top of funnel, like, get the best possible guests. You probably don't have a problem with that, but the best possible guests, maybe the ones that people don't always get on other people's podcasts. How do we tee up the guest? How do we execute the podcast? Then how do we ship it, promote it, and turn it into long tail, sticky ways that people can go and find this content? I think then you've got a product that people can consume in many, many different ways. And I think probably it's my best thing that I could possibly recommend would be, recording the podcast is just the start of what is a really great relationship that you built with someone. But it's also, you've pulled all these insights out. How can you get that to reach more people in the way that they might like to go and consume information, whether that's a newsletter or ebooks or cheat sheets or one pages or guides? And I think if you can get that part right, then your podcast will reach so many more people than if you just go, our job is to record a really great hour, ship it, and then we move on to the next guest next week, which I think a lot of people do.
Yeah. I'm going to double down on content. Speaking of podcasts, I mean, your content is awesome, and you're repurposing that podcast, right, for LinkedIn content, which is where your ICP and buyers live, where my buyers live as well. So, where do you see for GTM content fitting in? Because we have a lot of opinions on this, but I'd love to hear yours.
Yeah. Constantly evolving opinion on this, but I think it's the most important thing. So I'm probably going to make my first hire this year, which will be a content marketer. So I think it's the most important thing you can possibly have as a business. How do you differentiate and stand out in a world that's so cluttered and crowded? And for me, there's this concept that mind share precedes market share. So if you're in someone's mind, then you might get their business. And if you're not in someone's mind, then they're never going to give you the business. So content is, for me, is everything. I also listened to a podcast today with Mark Manson, the subtle art guy, and he was on Chris Doe's podcast, and he was talking about how he sees content's moved from being this social thing to now just being media. It's how people consume now, right? You ask younger people now, do they spend more time on YouTube or TV? They spend more time watching YouTube. And then look at, like, the watch time, like apps like Instagram and TikTok get, compared to how much time people spend on traditional media like newspapers and TV. People just spend way more time consuming their media through their cell phone and through their devices wherever they are. And that's what they like to do in their downtime. So I think if you've got this amazing thing that you've built, whether it's a business or whether it's some content, your job is find the people who would enjoy that content. So you're creating this whole, like, media engine around your business that helps people in their journeys to become the hero of their story. And if you're not finding those people, then how are those people ever going to know you exist and recommend you to friends? So I think it's a media play. It's how you build brand and trust in today's world. And I think that it's the most important thing that a business could possibly do, because products don't look different, but people really do.
Right.
And so if someone can go, when I think of Alley-oop, I think of Lexi doing pickleball, and I think of Gabe on a podcast, and they've got this impression of you because they see your voice and they see this talking head and they understand what you look like and they feel the emotion. I think that emotional connection you can create with a buyer and a customer is so much better than if you just ship, here's our product and here's what our services look like and here's what our business does, which people don't really care about. They care about how you can help them. And I think that people are the best possible conduit for that.
I love it. Awesome. So who's the person that should be reaching out to Richard Washington in our audience? Who do you want to talk to? And then more importantly, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, sure. So my ICP is pre-seed to Series B tech startups. That's really what we specialize in. And it's where it's this entrepreneur who wants to build a team of entrepreneurs around them who will multiply impact. So that's really the part of the market that we're best at. And I think it's because that's the part of the market that I've had exposure to as an operator. So I understand it uniquely. So if any business weirdly, about 40% of our business is in North America, you would think that some British guy in the south coast of England might not be a good North American partner, but about 40% of our roles are in the US. So if you're scaling a business in the US or in EMEA, then we'd be a good person or a good team to look at to help you to de-risk that hiring process. Or maybe you're just someone looking for the next step in your career and you'll go, well, how do I position myself as a multiplier? How do I find the right environment? How do I form some connections to go and make that next career choice that I've got much better than if I went through the traditional job searching game? So I'm happy to talk to anyone who's looking for growth because I enjoy helping people find it.
Awesome. And connecting with you on LinkedIn is the best way?
Yeah, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so that would definitely be the right place to get me.
Awesome. Well, Richard, thank you so much for spending the time with us on the show. We're so excited to have you. So thank you so much for your time, man.
Thanks for the time and thanks for the invitation. I appreciate it.